brought forth is, hey, wait a minute, who's been taking all this money? And that's why the Veterans Administration to this day is in dire straits. So the case proceeded to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court of the United States said certiorari denied. They didn't want to hear it. And I had judges and friends, law professors say, don't give up. With time, things change. People die. They move out of office. Keep trying. All you have to do is prove to the court that they lied and that you did find that that number's out there and is being used against you. Well, it didn't take very long because when people lie, they're going to get tripped up. And I was working for the chief administrative law judge of the state of Delaware, and I was able to get into all the unemployment records of veterans and talk to them as they came in, and I was doing my own studies. But one day I was told to go over to the federal building to this big veterans meeting. And there was veterans from the American Legion, VFW, all the veterans organizations, and even some other ones that I didn't even hear of or know about, and some other poopahs were over there. And Senator Joseph Biden from Delaware came walking in, and there was a gentleman accompanying him, and a naval uniform, white uniform, captain, and that's all I could tell at that point, because for a lot of people, naval rank's a little bit difficult. Captain's bars mean colonel, I think, in the Navy, but in the Air Force, 2 bars is a captain. In the Army, same. But there he was, and we all had this discussion, and it came my turn, and I stood up and told him about these documents in the court case and how all this money's getting ripped off. And he said, let's wait until the end of this, Senator Biden said. And when everybody left, we went into a room with a table and chairs and sat down, and I showed him all these documents.
You were with Senator Biden, and this gentleman dressed in white, who was?
And as we sat down at that table and I looked over, and of course he introduced him, but I saw the name tag. There sits John McCain.
John McCain. John McCain.
The John McCain, now United States Senator. And as one Vietnam veteran to another, I said to him, you need to really look at this. And I showed it to him.
Again, what year, what date, what month?
This was approximately 1983. I have a letter in my briefcase over here that shows my letter of introduction from the judge in Delaware, so I can pinpoint the exact month of it, but it was about 1983. And I looked over and said, you're a brother veteran. You need to know about this, and I showed it to him, and he got it all. And how
long was the meeting? How long did it take for you to kind of lay out the basics?
We were there probably about an hour.
Okay.
And so everybody, they understood.
How many people were in the room?
Just the 3 of us: Senator Biden, John McCain, and myself.
Oh my God.
And we left the meeting, and the senator said he would look into this matter. Well, as time told, John McCain went back to Arizona and became a congressman. Then he became a United States Senator, but to this day, not ever has he tried to introduce a bill or do anything to bring this to light to veterans. And I confronted him, went to his office in Washington, D.C. to confront him about it, and to more or less say to him, listen, you owe me one, you owe your brother veterans one. And when he saw me, he ran out the side door and ran down the hallway.
You were walking into his office, you were describing his office as a long one?
Yes.
And he was at the end?
Yeah,
he saw you?
He saw me back there and opened the side door to the office, which they can get out into the hallway, and boom, down the hallway he went running. And that was my opinion, and I've posted this up on the internet before so people can understand it, that when somebody does that, would sell their brother veterans down the drain, that kind of a person we don't need. And I would dare this individual to come and debate me on that particular subject on that day when we were there, and he heard it all, and he has done nothing. So
let me just segue with Dr. Warren here. Doctor, today we were on a radio/internet shortwave show. A gentleman, Alan from Illinois, discovered all of this on his own, almost like independent of him. Had never met him. And we put him in touch with each other and other people around the country who have kind of this mosaic of people. It's not just, there's probably a community of people that could have a big convention and discuss this in detail. We're discussing the fact that this has been going on for a long time. And what is it going to, walk us through, but he has submitted to Obama in Durban. Durban, 5 weeks ago.
Yes.
The latest. And Durban, within 3 days, sent him a letter saying, we are looking into this. So I just want the listening audience here on this program to know Senator Durbin is in receipt of a good chunk of this information. And he has stated that he is looking into this. I believe he sent information like this to Obama last year or whenever, and he didn't get the response that he's getting from Durbin. But proceed. Go ahead.
After this, my period of time working in Delaware, I came back up to New York, and I got a job working at a hospital in Syracuse, New York, as a temporary services as a hospital admissions clerk. Mm-hmm. And I worked for about 4 months, and they said, well, you're real good. You haven't missed any work. Why don't you go take a New York State Civil Service exam, and we'll hire you. So I went down to take the exam, and I sat in a chair, and the man brought in a piece of scratch paper and a pen, and he did it to 4 other people sitting there. I don't know if they were taking the same test. Then he came in, and he handed each one a test, and he came over to me and picked up my paper and picked up my pencil, and he walked out and didn't say anything. And the other people are looking at me like, what's going on?
Wait a minute, you
here?
hadn't finished, or?
No, he gave me nothing. He took it away from me.
Oh, my God.
And so I got up and followed him out, and I said, what's going on here? And he said, I can't let you take the test. And I said, I beg your pardon? And he said, you can't take the test. And I said, well, listen, you better tell me why, or I'm going to make a few phone calls, and you're going to be arrested for obstructing governmental administration. So he took me over, and he said, give me your Social Security number again. And he punched my Social Security number in the state's computer, and up came my military records, which they're not supposed to have. And he said, right there, see that? And he pointed to my secret code number, the one that the court said would never show up again. Judge, we fixed his records, believe us.
And this is how many years later?
We're the U.S. Attorney's Office. We don't tell lies. And, of course, we knew they were lying, but you got to catch them at it. So there it was, right there on this TV screen and the computer screen. And he said, we can't let you take the test.
Why? Because of that code?
Because of that
he
code
wouldn't
number,
tell you
because
why.
of that spin code.
But is there any specific law that states that you are barred from taking that code?
No. That was the strange thing, because anybody, if I'm a resident of New York State and I want to take a New York State Civil Service exam, of course I'm allowed to do it. And they had no legal reason to do that other than what he was told. His supervisor told him, if any of these veterans have any of these kind of secret codes, and he had the list of them in his desk drawer.
Again, it goes back to these Honeywell letters, the Boeing letters, the Goodyear Tire and Rubber letter. All of these corporations have received these codes on tens of millions of American veterans.
It was a form of discrimination. That's what it comes down to.
Yes, you have it exactly. And it's sort of a civil rights violation.
Right.
But what we were trying to say, and what we did in our argument to the court was, and what my attorney thought, is this is a foreclosure of the employment market. They just said to us veterans, when we got out of the military, it's like putting this big old label on your forehead, do not hire.
Yeah, you got a mark.
And that was it. You were done. So they have...
It's like putting a bag over your head.
Well, you were
saying, do not hire, unemployable, uninsurable, whatever.
Right, and as
you
walk by...
a felon then.
Yeah, that's right. You're worse than a felon, and you didn't commit an act. You did not.
I should say.
You didn't commit a criminal act.
Right.
And that's the funny thing about it, that nobody committed a crime. You were never tried for anything. You were never accused of anything. Just somebody who decided, I'll give him this one, and they gave him out like that. Now, when you go back to the particular point of this court case, when in '83, something else happened here. After the McCain incident, I went and did this thing with the New York State Department of Labor, and of course he told me you can't get it. I walked right over to the judge who was my mentor and friend. The Chief Judge of Syracuse, New York, was Joseph Falco. He's now deceased. And he said, Edwin, what you need to do is get this immediately over to the grand jury. And he said, I'm going to tell you a little trick. And he said, don't address it to the U.S. Attorney. Address it to Foreman, U.S. Federal Grand Jury, send it certified mail, no green return receipt card. Therefore, the secrecy of the grand jury is protected, and when they get it over at the court clerk's office, they must deliver it to the foreman of the grand jury. It's an old trick, he goes, a lawyer's trick. So I did it, and about a month later, I received a letter. And that letter said, come on over to the grand jury and testify. And I went in April of 1983 and testified before a United States federal grand jury, showed them all these documents, showed them the court order, how the government's attorneys lied, pointed to the one at U.S. attorney over there and said, that person is a criminal and a liar.
Oh, he was in the room?
Yes. And
Why was he in the room?
Because he was entitled as the United States Attorney, Assistant United States Attorney. They're allowed to be present during the grand jury. And I gave this evidence, and I said, you citizens need to indict that man over at the unemployment office, because I filed criminal charges against him, and indict his supervisor and all the way right to Albany, New York, and to the governor.